The next thing that popped up for me, though, just some context. I have been very worried about my Act 1 outline because it reached 19 chapters. And to date, at least, uh, my chapters tend to average at around 3,000 words. 3,000 times 19. Or let's say like 2,500 times 19. That's a lot. You know? That would mean that my chapters would probably run anywhere between like my act 1 would finish anywhere between like 45,000 words to what 60,000, and that's a lot of words to invest in for the act 1 of a novel. To be fair, this is a standalone novel, but like it just worried me a lot because if you think about it, the rest of my novel, nominally I have like 3 acts because I divided it according to like the 3 act structure. But I have act 1, I have act 2A, which is act 2 before the midpoint, and then act 2 after the midpoint. I have I have like 2 arcs in. I have 2 arcs there before act 3 starts. And so I'm still debating whether to combine these 2 arcs or to keep them separate. But if these sort of like arcs or acts run at this sort of like average of 40,000 to 60,000 words each, that's a long book. Very long, super long, like as hell. And I'm not sure keeping it that way would be a good idea. So that's the context, right? So while I was trying to figure out how to tackle the next bit of chapter 3, it occurred to me that my act 1, except for the end of act 1, it felt a little, just looking at the plot beats in my outline, it felt a little like slice of life, like this happened and this happened and this happened. And sure, my main character has like this arc goal or this act goal, and she's moving towards it. But I felt like my story would be better served by having sort of mini arcs within the overarching act, where each mini arc has its own arc goal, and each chapter would serve to push her closer towards it or move her away from it, right? So what I ended up doing was sort of restructuring my act 1 a little, moving events around so that in each chapter she sort of has a goal. She's in each like mini arc, she has a goal she's moving towards, which would lead to the next arc's goal, right? So yeah, my outline has changed again, very minimally. In the process though, I actually find that I like this version a lot more. It feels like, looking at the outline, it feels like things are moving a lot more, and I was able to knock 2 chapters off. So instead of, no, not 2 chapters, I was able to knock 4 chapters out of my outline. I have my estimated word count for Act 1 will now be like 45,000 words, which is great. I'm glad. Knocked it down a little. The other thing that happened was that I was thinking about how I was structuring my novel in arcs and mini arcs. So like sort of nested arc structures. I was initially inspired by Kisha Tenketsu and how manga artists used the Kisha Tenketsu structure to sort of like plan their stories. In terms of novels, If you're following an act structure, like 4-act structure or 3-act structure, I generally think of it going like the overarching arc, which is the novel, the overarching outline, and then nested under that you have like the arcs per act, and then it's kind of a bit interchangeable between arc and act for me personally. Uh, so Act 1 can have its own arc. Act 2A, before the midpoint, has its own arc because the midpoint actually can function as its own mini climax, right? Like a lot of people like having something interesting happen in the midpoint, so it can be like its own mini climax, like I'm saying. And then Act 2B, which is like after the midpoint, Act 2 after the midpoint has its own arc. The climax, I mean, Act 3 has its own arc. That kind of thing. And then under that, and this is what I am currently working on and trying to figure out, is having like a series of mini arcs under each act, or under each major arc in the novel. And then within that, arcs per chapter, and then if there are more scenes in the chapter, arcs per scene, that kind of thing, you know. It's like I said, it's like how mangaka use Kisha Tenketsu. They use Kisha Tenketsu on the overarching story basis, and then they have the arcs under that, and then within those arcs they have a Kisha Tenketsu arc in a chapter and over a 2-page spread. So I find it really interesting. I found that really interesting, and I started out with wanting to do that in my own novel, but like, you know, for adapted to novel instead of like manga. And then that's how I initially planned or outlined my work. And just so that it feels familiar to most English speaking readers, you know, I decided to like align major beats with the 3-act story structure or the 7-point story structure. They're essentially the same thing. It's just that the 7-point or 9-point story structure kind of just elaborates a little more on what goes on within the 3-act story structure, you know. But I had like an intuitive understanding of how like the Kisha Tenketsu arcs work, because that's how I wanted to structure it. I have like a Ki, a Sho, a Ten, and a Ketsu. So I had an introduction, a development, a twist, and a resolution in each arc, right? So that's overarching, act, and chapter. But then with how long my chapters are turning out to be, I realized that I needed like medium-term goals. Like chapter goals are short-term goals. And then let's say the mini arcs within an act, I'll just say like maybe those are my like medium-term goals and my mini arc goals. And then the act goals are like long-term goals, and the overarching story is like a main goal. I don't know, something. I'm just rambling. Thank you for listening. So I had that. I had my outline, and it followed that kind of like sort of schematic before I made the mini arcs last night. Actually, it's just last night. Yeah. So that's what I was doing last night, and I'm going to be doing it still today, I guess. Other things that I'm doing related to my story. I am considering, like, even if I say that, I am still considering splitting my book into 2 because of how long I think it could run. Um, Act 2A, I can see it having 2 or 3 mini arcs. Yeah, 2 or 3 mini arcs. Just which will probably mean what, 10 to 15 chapters, and then Act 2B would also have like 2 or 3 mini arcs. I don't know if it's gonna be Act 2B and 2C or Act 2B flat, because I still haven't decided, like I said, whether I want to combine those two, to weave those two together. But 2 or 3 mini arcs, yeah, for the section of the novel after the midpoint, right? For Act 2 after the midpoint, 2 or 3 mini arcs as well. And then the grand finale, which I'm still not sure how to what needs to be done there, primarily because my main character is kind of girly. Your internal conflict, you have so much. I don't know which one to use for your aha moment there. But yeah, those are my, oh shucks, something bit me. I'm so sorry. Those are my updates regarding my story. I will keep you guys posted. I think I will count this as my updates for all of last week, right? So so for this week, I'll start with tomorrow's updates. Right. Okay. Bye. Thanks for listening.